The Clover Kingdom had known peace for exactly 11 days when the sky over the Black Bull's base cracked open like a dropped mirror. Asta felt it before he saw it, a pressure behind his eyes, the same dull ache he got whenever anti-magic bristled against something it didn't understand. He was mid-swing, training sword raised over his head, when Noelle's shout cut through the yard. "Asta! Look!" He looked. Above the crooked tower of the Black Bull's hideout, the clouds were folding inward around a point of absolute black, not the black of night but the black of absence, like someone had taken scissors to the sky and cut a hole clean through it. "That's not weather," Magnus said, backing up a step. "Weather doesn't do that." Captain Yami appeared on the roof without seeming to have climbed there, cigarette already lit, eyes narrowed at the tear. "Grimoire signature," he said. "A big one. And it's old, older than any of the kingdom's registered books." The hole widened, and for a moment Asta swore he could see pages in it, endless drifting pages with no ink on them at all, and then it sealed itself shut with a sound like a held breath being released. In its place, spinning lazily down toward the training yard, was a grimoire. It was bound in gray leather gone soft with age, and it had no cover emblem. No clover. No mark of any kind. It simply fell, and it simply landed, and it simply was, sitting in the dirt like it had always belonged there. Nobody moved to pick it up. "Since when do grimoires just fall out of the sky?" Asta finally said. "Since never," Yami answered, dropping down from the roof without ceremony. He crouched over the book but didn't touch it. Smoke curled from between his teeth. "This thing isn't from around here." Word traveled fast. By the time the sun set, 3 Magic Knight squads had representatives standing around the Black Bull's training yard, and none of them had a clue what they were looking at. Yuno arrived with the Golden Dawn's Klaus and Mimosa in tow, his expression unreadable in the way it always was when something genuinely unsettled him, which was rare enough that Asta noticed immediately. "You feel it too," Asta said, not really a question. "It doesn't feel like mana," Yuno said. He stood a few feet from the book, wind swirling faintly at his collar though there was no wind. "It feels like the opposite of mana. Like something that was never meant to have a form." "That's basically what anti-magic is," Asta said, grinning despite himself. "Guess it likes me already." "This isn't a joke, Asta." "I know. I'm still gonna touch it." "Wait." Too late. Asta had already crossed the yard and closed his hand around the grimoire's spine. Nothing exploded. Nothing screamed. The gray leather simply warmed under his palm, the way a stone left in sunlight warms, and a single word bled up through the cover in ink the color of dried blood. "Hollow." Then, underneath it, smaller. "It remembers what was taken." Asta blinked. That's not ominous at all." Yami exhaled a long stream of smoke. "Congratulations, brat. You just claimed something nobody understands." That night, the Black Bulls gathered in the common room while Vanessa attempted, unsuccessfully, to get the grimoire to do literally anything. It didn't open its pages for magic. It didn't respond to mana infusion. It sat on the table looking exactly like what it was, a book with nothing written in it, waiting. "Maybe it's not a spell book at all," Finral offered. "Maybe it's a record. Something that stores things instead of casting things." "Stores what things?" Charmy asked around a mouthful of bread. Nobody had an answer until Nacht, who had been leaning silently in the doorway for the better part of an hour, finally spoke. "I've heard of grimoires like this," he said. "Devil World scholars call them hollow books. They don't hold spells. They hold debts. Something is missing from the world, a person, a memory, a piece of magic that was erased, and the book exists to find whoever's willing to pay the price of putting it back." The room went quiet. "Cheerful," Asta said. It chose you, Nacht went on, because anti-magic doesn't just cancel spells. It cancels absence. You're the only person alive who could hold a hole in the world without falling into it. Asta looked down at his hands. He thought, unbidden, of his own missing magic attribute, the years spent being told he was born with nothing, only to learn nothing was never quite the right word. He thought about the swords his mana never should have let him wield, about the demon in his arm that half the kingdom still flinched from. So what's it want from me? Hold on, Ghosh cut in, arms crossed, looking more suspicious than usual. Why should we trust some Devil World scholar's word on a book that fell out of a hole in the sky? For all we know it's cursed. For all we know it's trying to eat Asta from the inside. If it wanted to eat him it's doing a bad job, Vanessa said, flicking a card between her fingers without looking up. Cursed objects usually announce themselves louder than this. This one's just sad. Like it's been waiting a long time for somebody to notice it. That's a weirdly specific read for a fortune teller, Magna muttered. I read people. Books aren't that different once you've handled enough of them. Vanessa tapped the cover once, gently, the way she might touch someone's hand. Whatever's in there wants to be finished, not fed. Nacht inclined his head slightly, as close as he ever came to agreeing with someone out loud. She's not wrong. Hollow books don't attack. They petition. In the devil realm they're considered a mercy, a way for something forgotten to finally get its due, instead of drifting unanswered forever. The problem, he added, is that whoever's holding one doesn't get to say no. Once it's chosen you, the debt exists whether you go looking for it or not. Ignore it and the world doesn't forget the debt was owed. It just makes someone else pay the difference. Comforting, Yami said dryly, stubbing out his cigarette against the doorframe. So the brat's stuck with it either way. Good, Asta said, before anyone could talk him out of anything. I wasn't gonna leave it sitting on the table anyway. As if in answer, the grimoire's cover flickered open on its own for the first time, one page, and one page only, filling itself with words that hadn't existed a heartbeat before. A name is missing from the kingdom's memory. Find it. Say it. Pay for it. The Hage Village well, before the frost moon. The road to Hage took the better part of a day on foot, longer than either of them remembered it being as kids, though back then neither of them had ever measured distance in anything but how long it took to get bored. Finral offered to teleport them straight there and Asta almost said yes out of habit before Yuno shook his head. Let's walk it, Yuno said. Feels wrong to just pop in on a grave. Asta didn't argue. They walked in the kind of quiet that only worked between two people who'd spent their whole childhood arguing about everything else, past the same crooked fence posts and the same dry creek bed they used to race across, until the shape of the village came up over the hill exactly the way it always had, like it had been waiting there the whole time they were gone. Hage hadn't changed much. The same crooked houses, the same tooth in soil, the same well at the village center that Asta and Yuno had thrown 100 childhood dares into. It felt strange to walk back into it now, 17 and armored and carrying an anti-magic sword on his back, as if the village might not recognize him anymore. You ever think about it, Asta said, out of nowhere, staring at the well as they approached. That we got left here too. Same as whoever this book's looking for. Every day I was a kid, Yuno said. Less now. Yeah. Asta scratched the back of his neck. Guess that's why it picked me. Or picked us, really. Yuno had come without being asked. You're not doing this without me, he'd said back at the base, and Asta hadn't argued, because there was a version of 8-year-old Asta and 8-year-old Yuno standing at this exact well that neither of them wanted to face alone. Sister Lily met them at the chapel gate, older now, her surprise at seeing them softening quickly into worry when she saw the grimoire in Asta's hand. That book, she said. I've seen its mark before. A long time ago. You know about hollow grimoires? Yuno asked. I know about loss, Lily said quietly. There was a boy who lived here, before either of you. Before the orphanage even had its name. He was found the same year as you both, left at that well, same as you two were. She looked at Asta, then at Yuno, some old grief moving behind her eyes. He didn't survive his first winter. And when he died, the village forgot him. Not naturally. Something took the memory. I only know because I still have the blanket he was wrapped in, and I could never remember writing his name on the tag sewn into it, even though it's my own handwriting. She led them into the chapel and returned with a small square of cloth, soft with age, and name stitched into the corner in careful thread. The letters were there. Asta and Yuno both stared at them. Neither of them could read what they said. The names simply refused to be understood, the way a word looks wrong if you stare at it too long, except infinitely worse, it stayed wrong no matter how long they looked. The grimoire in Asta's hand grew warm again. This is the theft. Someone erased a life to hide a crime. Find who benefited from a dead child's forgotten name, and the debt can be paid. It took 3 days of digging through old parish records, tax scrolls, and half-rotted census books in Hage's chapel basement before Yuno found the thread, a noble family, minor and long since fallen out of relevance, that had once quietly claimed an orphaned heir's inheritance the same year Sister Lily remembered a nameless boy dying. A child who should have inherited a modest plot of land and a family name had simply vanished from every ledger, and the land had passed instead to a distant cousin, a cousin who used it to buy his way into a magic knight captaincy 2 generations back. Someone erased a kid to steal an inheritance, Asta said, staring at the yellowed page. And it worked so well the whole world forgot he existed. That's not just fraud, Yuno said, voice tight. That's like killing someone twice. First his life, then his memory. The grimoire pulsed once in Asta's grip, and this time when it opened, more words spilled across the page, faster, almost urgent. The debt is not gold. The debt is memory. Say his name where it was stolen. Anti-magic does not create, it refuses to let absence stand. Refuse this one. But the name still wouldn't resolve into sound. Whatever spell had erased the boy had woven itself into the world too deeply for eyes or ears alone. It was Yuno who understood first. It's not a reading problem, he said slowly. It's a magic problem. Someone bound his name with a concealment spell strong enough to survive 15 years. We're not going to read it. We're going to have to break it. Asta looked down at his own sword, the plain, ordinary, anti-magic blade that had never done anything except cancel things out. Yeah, he said, and for the first time since the book had fallen out of the sky, he actually smiled. That, I can do. Before they returned to the well, there was one more stop to make. The cousin's name was Berrigan Aldevic, a captain-in-waiting who'd spent 2 generations quietly climbing the edges of a Magic Knight command roster, always one rank shy of anything anyone would bother investigating. He kept a modest manor an hour's ride from Hage, tidy hedges, a single guard at the gate who didn't look built for trouble. He wasn't hard to find. He was, however, very unhappy to see them. Magic Knights don't have jurisdiction over old family disputes, Aldevic said, standing in his doorway with the particular calm of a man who had said this sentence to himself many times as reassurance. Whatever paperwork you think you've dug up, it's 15 years settled. It's not settled, Yuno said. It's hidden. There's a difference. There was a boy, Asta said. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He had a name. You erased it so nobody would ask where your land came from. We're not here to arrest you ourselves. We're here so he gets it back. Something in Aldevic's face slipped, just for a second, not guilt exactly, more like the specific fear of a man who has spent a decade and a half convincing himself a lie was actually just a fact. You don't understand what that spell cost, he said quietly. Concealment magic that thorough isn't cheap. I paid a fortune teller and kick at everything I had to make sure no one would ever. He stopped himself. Ever what? Yuno pressed. Ever remember him clearly enough to ask questions, Aldevic finished, and for a moment he looked less like a man defending a theft and more like someone who'd been carrying something heavy for a very long time and had never once been allowed to put it down. I told myself it wasn't really theft. He was gone already. The land wasn't doing him any good in a grave nobody visited. It wasn't yours to decide that, Asta said. And you don't get to keep something just because it's easier than giving it back. Aldevic didn't fight them. He didn't call the guard. He simply stood in his doorway as they left, and something in the set of his shoulders suggested that whatever came next, investigation, arrest, disgrace, might almost be a relief after 15 years of holding a secret that had never once let him rest. They returned to the well at dusk, the whole village gathering at a careful distance, sensing without being told that something important was about to happen. Sister Lily stood at the front, the small stitched cloth held against her chest like something sacred. Asta planted his sword point down in the dirt beside the well and closed both hands around the grip. I don't really get magic, he admitted, loud enough for Yuno to hear. Never have. But I get that somebody decided a kid didn't matter enough to remember. And I'm real sick of people deciding other people don't matter. Yuno stepped up beside him, wind gathering soft and steady around his shoulders, not an attack, but something closer to a held breath, ready to lend its strength the moment it was needed. We don't know his name yet, he said. But we're not leaving until we do. Asta drove the sword down into the well's stone lip. Anti-magic didn't explode outward the way it had against demons and dark magic in the past, instead it spread the way ink spreads through water, quiet and total, seeking out whatever didn't belong in the world and refusing, simply and absolutely, to let it hide anymore. The concealment spell had been small once. Small enough for one grieving, opportunistic noble to cast alone, 15 years ago, over a well where nobody would think to look twice. It had never been built to withstand a power whose entire purpose was erasing what shouldn't exist. It broke like a held breath finally let go. The stitched letters on the cloth in Sister Lily's hands rearranged themselves into something the world could finally hold onto again, and her voice, when she read it aloud, shook only a little. Emile, she said. His name was Emile. The grimoire in Asta's hand flared white-hot, not with pain but with something closer to relief, and the single word on its cover, hollow, dissolved into the leather like ink sinking into water, leaving the cover blank and ordinary and utterly unremarkable, a book like any other. Aldevic was arrested within the week. Fraud charges dressed up as an inheritance dispute rarely survive an actual investigation once someone bothers to start one. He didn't contest it. It wasn't triumphant. Nobody got their childhood back. But Sister Lily planted a small marker by the well with Emile's name carved into it, and for the first time in 15 years, a boy who had lived and died in Hage was allowed to have existed. Asta sat on the low wall by the well that evening, grimoire, ordinary now, blank now, resting beside him, watching Yuno skip stones across the dark water of the reservoir the way they used to as kids. You think there are more of those books out there? Asta asked. More hollow grimoires, more names nobody remembers? Yuno considered this, another stone skipping twice before it sank. Probably, he said. The world's big. People go missing from history more often than anyone likes to think about. Then I guess we've got more work to do. We? Yuno glanced sideways, the ghost of something like a smile at the corner of his mouth. Didn't realize I signed up for this. You showed up, didn't you? Somebody has to make sure you don't swing that sword at something you shouldn't. Asta laughed, the sound carrying out over the water, and above them the sky stayed exactly as it should, no tears in it, no holes, nothing missing that anyone could see. But he kept the blank grimoire anyway, tucked it into his pack beside his other books, because some part of him understood now that the world was full of quiet, deliberate absences, and somebody ought to go looking for what they'd taken. They stayed by the well until the last light went out of the sky, neither of them in much of a hurry to head back. Somewhere behind them, Sister Lily was lighting the chapel's evening lamps, the small warm windows glowing one by one against the dark, and for a moment it felt less like the end of something and more like the very beginning of it, the first of however many names still waited out there to be found. "Hey," Asta said eventually, standing and slinging his pack over one shoulder. "Race you back to the chapel. Loser buys dinner." "You don't have any money," Yuno pointed out. "Exactly. Better make sure you win." Yuno was already moving before Asta finished the sentence, wind gathering at his heels, and Asta swore under his breath and took off after him, and for a little while at least, the two of them were just a couple of kids from Hage again, running flat out toward the same lit windows they'd grown up chasing, with nothing between them but the ground and the dark and an old, ordinary book writing quiet in Asta's pack.